from the love that is loving you. And you may try to ignore me, try to reason me away, hide in strange philosophy, it's foolishness you say. But I won't go away, I am holding you, loving you. I'm not far, I'm not far, I'm not far. Oh my love, it's who you are. That's where you'll encounter me. It's in the beating of your heart. You will never be apart from the love that is loving you. When you thought that you were right all along, but discovered, oh dear, I was wrong. Love's more stubborn than your stubbornness. I am holding you, loving you. I'm not far, I'm not far, I'm not far. Oh my love, it's who you are. That's where you'll encounter me. In the beating of your heart, no, you'll never be apart from the love that is loving you. When you think that you have lost your way, I am the way, and I'm not letting you go. I'm not far, I'm not far. Oh my love, it's who you are. That's where you'll encounter me. In the beating of your heart, no, you'll never be apart from the love that is loving you. Oh, love is loving you. Loving you. I've seen
Awesome. Well, the floor is open to comments, questions. So, thoughts.
Doubts as well.
Yes. And doubts. Yes. Love it. Feel free.
You understand?
Yeah.
I was thinking about uncertainty,
Yeah.
and been meditating on maybe to the scripture. Hebrews 6, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Reading it here from the Mary. Our hearts and minds are certain, anchored securely within the innermost courts of God's immediate presence, beyond the veil. I'll just read that.
Yeah.
It's basically speaking about being an anchor for the soul.
Yes. Yes.
So, in the light of what you said,
Yeah.
how do you balance?
So, so obviously interpretation. I think the word that's actually used there is we have this assurance, and I think that's a beautiful image that it speaks about hope as the anchor of our soul. Hope this. I think that's again one of the most beautiful things that was introduced in the Hebrew way of thinking. That it was this idea that God was not just a God that affirms what is, because that's most of the gods that were invented are gods that affirm the current order. That's how they were invented and they function. But here the Hebrew people who are an enslaved nation have a very different view of God. And their view of God is, this is a God who changes the things that are. This is a God of hope. So that, yes, that assurance of the soul, which in the context of what he's saying there, we all face situations where this world is a rough sea, where everything wants to throw us to and fro, and to have an anchor, to have a stability, we find it in that relationship. But that relationship is not static. So that's where the word for me, where certainty becomes, if we take the definition of the self-assurance, of self-convincing, where that often becomes a hindrance to move with a God of hope, a God that's actually changing things. It's difficult to both be absolutely certain with what is, but also moving a God that's changing the future. So somehow we've got to find that picture that what is stable is, I mean, if I think of our relationship, goodness, have we changed over how many years? Many years, more than 3 decades of relationships. It's like so much has changed. Yet, what's an anchor? We had to continually find that place of saying, we are committed to one another's joy. We are committed to one another's well-being. We are committed to this love. That remains stable. We don't know what the future holds, but I know it holds you. And I think that is probably what the Hebrew image gives there, is things changing, but there is a place of assurance.
And it's in relationships.
Yeah, that's the relationship. Does that make sense? Any other thoughts?
And then can you maybe explore a little bit more on the God of the, I mean, the Bible says God is the God of, is all things are possible. The God for whom all things are possible.
Yeah.
And not all things are certain.
Okay, so that's
the
another way of...
possibilities gives you like that, you can explore, there's
Yeah.
limitlessness in this.
Yes. Because I think most of us grew up with that image, if not explicitly, it was implied that for God all things are certain. Have you grown up with that image that God knows the future as well as He knows the past? Have you kind of heard that idea?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because Jesus never introduces us to the God for whom all things are certain. He introduces us to the God for whom all things are possible, not certain. So what's the difference there? You know, a possibility cannot be reduced to certainty. If something is certain, it's no longer a possibility. It's a certainty, logically. And if something's possible, it means you cannot be certain. So let's think about future events in that sense. So this is another way in which my appreciation of who and what God is and how we are in relationship with Him has changed dramatically. Because I grew up with the Hellenistic Platonic theological influence of our world, that God knows the future as well as He knows the past. Now that idea was first proposed by Thomas Aquinas, and so one of the earliest Christian theologians, and when they asked him, well, how does God know the future? Because either God has all the information needed to predict the future with certainty, but when I asked Thomas Aquinas, how does God know the future? He said, well, God is outside of time, so He's seen it. So for Him, time is like a block. And we are in the block. We're moving through the block, so everything looks new. But God is outside the block, and so He can see the future with as much clarity as He can see the past. That was his idea. Thankfully today our understanding of time has been dramatically improved, and I'm not going to give the full thing, but basically what many scientists and what in our experience what we know is true is there's no such thing as time outside of change. Now when we speak about the hour, we speak about, or let's take something more obvious, a day. You can't go anywhere in the universe and find something called a day. A day is how long it takes for our Earth to spin on its axis. The movement is real. The change is real. Time is an abstract. It's a concept, an abstract concept that we put upon that movement, upon that change. A year. You won't find a year anywhere in this universe. What you'll find is an Earth spinning around our sun, and the amount of time it takes to spin all around the sun, we decided to call that a year. So time is an abstract concept. What is real is relational movement. And there's a beautiful book, if you're interested in the subject, by a physicist that's won Nobel Prizes and whatever. It's called The Order of Time. Carlos Ravelli, The Order of Time. And basically, he comes to this conclusion, that time is relational movement. So, if you can imagine a God outside of relationship,
Wow.
then you can imagine a God outside of time.
Yeah.
But everything we know about relationship is that the relationships that happened, and it's accumulated into this moment. And the relationships that hasn't happened yet, hasn't happened yet. There's no block for God to see. the future. God is in this relationship with us.
As I
Now,
am.
obviously,
As I am.
yes, so here he is present, and he will be what he will be, and he is what he is, but he's in every relationship. But every relationship has a measure of freedom. God is not the one who controls your every thought, your every relationship, because love does not control. And if God is love, it means that although he's present in this relationship, you are the ones that choose the possibilities to realize in your life.
That's right.
So I think the way in which God influences those choices is not through force, but through persuasion,
Yes.
through drawing us, through showing us this is worth it, this is beautiful, giving us visions of beauty and say, but it's your choice. And so I think in every moment, my whole past, all my environment bears upon my next moment, and also possibilities of the future. And I somehow, each one of you, harmonize all that information into an internal unity to step into this next moment in which some possibilities have been realized and others have been forever gone, and new possibilities happen. So I think the way in which God influences that possibilities, whether it's in a molecule, a plant, an insect, a bug, or in your life, God has, I believe, a vision of beauty for the best, most meaningful, most beautiful life you can live. In every moment, those possibilities, however subtle, I think most of it is unconscious, it's not even conscious, is presented to you.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. It's awesome.
That's why God is, I think, present in every moment. So I don't think we can step into the next moment without God is there. God, and so in scientific terms, they now speak of fields of possibility. They speak of this in physics, but you will not find a field of possibility in the physical world. Because where are possibilities located? Seeing that possibilities are the very things that are not actual. Where are you going to find them? So this is a problem for some scientists. That's why some of them dreamed up the multiverse kind of concept, because they don't know where to put possibilities. So they just say, no, everything's real. It's just somewhere else we can't see it. But the only way where possibilities are located, in your experience, is in your mind.
That's right.
You kind of think, what is it? What do I want to do? The possibilities for next week, where do they present themselves to you? In your mind.
That's right. Yes.
So possibilities exist in some mind-like structure. And physics acknowledge that. Our world won't operate without fields of possibilities that draws every moment forward. So here you are. Every moment God presents, God, first of all, God sees the most beautiful, meaningful, valuable life for you. And he calculates, based on where you are now, what are the possibilities that will take you closer to that beauty. Those are the possibilities he opens in front of you. You might, and so there's the shortest path. You might decide, oh no, I want to go this way. The divine GPS just recalculates. God doesn't say, no, you've missed the path, that's it. You're never going to get there. God just recalculates, okay, based on where you are now, what's the possibilities that's going to take you to that place of beauty and value, and presents you with possibilities again. And by us actualizing those possibilities, we are realizing the values that God has in his mind.
Yeah.
In other words, divine value cannot be actualized without you. And And on the other hand, so can you see what value that places upon your life? You are God's strategy for creating value, meaning in this universe. Okay. He can't do it without creation. But secondly, what it means is we are really responsible for what actually happens in this world. Because God's not the one making the decisions of what possibilities to realize. We make those decisions. We decide what to do in the next moment. So this world is what it is, both its beauty and its horror because of us. God's not the one doing anything except presenting us with the possibilities. Or I would maybe think of God's way of creating as a poetic expression where each one of us is maybe a verse. And he takes all these verses and harmonizes it into a universe, a verse that somehow harmonizes and says one thing. So the implications for this is, I can say God knows everything that can be known, including the fact that some things can't be known.
Sure.
Because the future hasn't happened yet. And free agents are going to decide what they do.
Okay.
So there's much about the future that God doesn't know. I think he knows much more than I do. I mean, if I had to take into account the consciousness of this whole world, the whole universe, I think I'll know more about the likelihood of the future possibilities to take place than what I know now. So God knows much more, but he doesn't have an exhaustive knowledge of what the future holds. He knows what's possible. And he's drawing us towards beauty. And we were speaking in Arizona to a beautiful community, and the mom and the daughter has got a precious relationship. She's a teenager, and about a year or so before we got there, she told her mom, this prayer thing and communicating with God, there's just a blockage. It doesn't work for me. The mom said, you know what it is? No, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. I think it was about after the second session, she came to her mom and she said, Mom, that blockage, it's gone. And the mom said, what happened? What? She said, I think it's this idea that God knew everything, but made it so irrelevant for me to speak to him.
Sure.
So patronizing. To speak to somebody who already knows the whole thing. Why speak to him? Why make us if you're interested, if you know it all? And suddenly, relationship became real because she realized that this God is truly in this world with me.
Yes.
Offering whatever possibilities and knowledge he can, but also not knowing the future with absolute certainty.
And
Knowing that these are the...
What I say matters to him.
Yes.
There is an interest.
Yeah. And suddenly, as Mary Anne said, she felt that what I say is really of interest to God. That he is working together with me to build a future that is beautiful. Yeah.
Sure. I think the scripture comes to mind now where it says that the question is who has the mind of Christ,
Yes.
has to instruct him.
Yes.
It always bothered me, that last bit, has to instruct him. I
Yeah.
thought, God, who am I to instruct you?
Yes.
But listening to you today, it's like, there it is. Yeah.
He's genuinely interested in conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to work this out together. I can't do it on my own. Have you ever heard of a God who can't do it on your own? On his own. We've been so blinded by our idea of a God who doesn't need anyone or anything and can do whatever he wants to for whatever reason, and we don't need to understand. That God does not exist.
I'm thinking of the implications of that merging of matter
Yes.
and spirit, where it's not two separate entities.
Yeah.
Is that the mind and the body has become one.
Yeah.
God is not out there, He's here,
Absolutely.
having the same experience with you in that body,
Yes.
which is His, but
Yes.
it's also yours, and both are you experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's so complicated? Because modern days and religion, God is there,
Yeah.
we make Him responsible for everything,
Yeah.
and there He doesn't come through for us. We just gruntle, and we jump off this Christian wagon, and He's only good when He's good for us in doing the thing we think He's supposed to. So we put all those expectations on Him,
Yeah.
and most of us are disappointed when He doesn't meet our expectations. But what the implications that you actually want, and that you're responsible for whatever happens here.
Yes.
And He, in the mind and the body, is just merged. I mean,
Yeah.
how does that picture? Because for me personally, it gives me so much hope.
Yes.
That I'm not a victim waiting for this reluctant God to act on my behalf.
Yeah.
But He's with me, as me.
Absolutely.
He's co-creating with me. He's as excited about my future as I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
En not, ek het al gehoord, hy doen nou weer mond, ek weet man. When we grew up with that God,
Yeah.
it's like, praying was not fun. I
Yes.
grew up in Pentecost and we used to pray 5 minutes,
Yeah.
just telling me what to do.
Yes.
And after you finish 5 minutes, you finish praying. Then it's just, amen, thank you Jesus, thank you
Yes.
Jesus. But now, I've been conversing with Him, man.
You asked him to do the same thing every week. Let all the demons out the service, go and bind the sweep this place again. Microphones again. Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
That's the thing I'm thinking of. You know what this does to me with regards to popular teaching about find out the purpose of God for your life.
Yes.
Without purpose, abuse is inevitable. Now we grew up in certain circles where purpose was everything. The confusion that goes with that, for year after year not knowing my purpose.
Yes.
Oh, I want to do this, but is it in line with the purpose of God?
Yes.
What if I miss God?
Yeah.
What if I do this and I climb this ladder and after 10 years I find out but I climbed the wrong wall. So now the whole thought of God here with me, exploring my life
Yeah.
in a unique new way,
Yes.
with me and with endless possibilities. And He's eager
Yeah.
to explore.
Yeah.
So this is the next thing.
Yeah.
And that whole recalculation.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Recalculate your distance.
Yeah.
Recalculate. The end product is always enjoyment.
Yes.
It's beautiful now what you're saying
Love
because
it.
it's just such a release for
Yeah.
me now because God, my purpose.
I've missed it.
I miss my
Yeah.
purpose. I don't want to miss my purpose. So I
Yeah.
don't want to do the fear of failure, so I'm going to do
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are the purpose.
I am the purpose.
Come on.
Beautiful.
So good.
You
Eh?
know, I think what you said is that I feel like you said that it always says God knows the future. And you know, doing a lot of funerals, you know, and people get dressed in cars and that all type of stuff. You know, God knew about that. I always had a problem with that. How could God knew about that? It's not possible. Because His thoughts concerning us is not evil.
Yeah.
And that is what people are saying. It's like, because we grew up like, you know, like what Neil said, you know, it's a God of possibilities. But like you said, that God doesn't know everything, but you're right. It's what you decide, and God, you and God can work it together.
Collaboration.
Like what Pastor said, and that you also like, we are to instruct God. And so that really just makes more sense to me because I always got upset with it, and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
How can people say that God knew that somebody's going to die
Yeah.
that day? Doesn't make sense.
Isn't the scripture that God is all knowing and is omniscient and is omnipresent and is
So this is saying, what does that mean? It means God knows everything that can be known.
Yeah.
So everything that's happened, everything that's happening. And he doesn't know it just observing it from a distance. He knows it because of his presence. So suddenly God's knowledge is linked to his omnipresence. It's because God is present in every event as it unfolds. Because God is present in every experience as you are having it. He knows everything that can be known. Now, again, the body is a good analogy. You know, if I take a needle and I prick my arm with it, the first part of me that feels it are the cells that's being severed. Those cells are shouting out, we feel something, and we need, this message is urgent. Somebody is sticking needles in me. And so it gets to what I call me. So I am a synchronization of all the information that's happening in my body, and sometimes, but I also exceed the information of just the parts. So there's a harmonization that takes place that adds a subjectivity, a personality to it that it doesn't have on its own. So pantheism is a term by which they basically say God is equal to the universe. That's pantheism. Panentheism is a term that I'm more comfortable with in terms of describing what I'm speaking about, and that is all things are in God. So, and God's in all things, but there's not a one-to-one relationship as if he's just equal to the universe. I think there is a synergy that produces a subjectivity that is greater than just the sum of the parts. So, for instance, now I'm looking, wherever you look, in front of you is a space that's focused. On the sides, it's a bit more blurry. And it's not because your eyes are less capable of giving high definition to what you see on the sides. It's because your mind decides that there's only one portion that's important enough to render in high definition. I don't want to bother you with calculations that's not that important. Now that happens in your whole being. Your whole body is continually calculating. There's most of what happens in you is unconscious. Now, you don't know what bacteria is eating what food and what's going on. Hopefully, it's better if you don't know. But every now and then something's important enough to say, pay attention, and it comes into conscious thought. And so I think when we speak about God, I think it's, for me, a great comfort that God does know more than what I know. That God has a much broader perspective. In fact, he sees from every perspective. He experiences it all. Yes. He knows the possibilities and how to draw me to that beauty, and he wants to communicate it to me. But there is the reality of freedom, which means the future has not been determined. And it's that part, the idea that the future is determined, that I'm saying, no, it's not. And therefore God doesn't know it in certainty. He knows where he wants to take it. I think a family relationship is a good analogy as well. Your relationship with your kids, if your first one was born and you decided you're going to be a dentist, I'm getting you all the books about teeth, and I'm going to take you to all my dentist friends. That's my plan for your life. That's probably not going to lead to a very healthy relationship with that child, because you have taken away their creativity. You have determined their future. A good parent says, I want to do whatever I can to make their future possible. And whatever that is, we're going to work this out. What do you enjoy? Do you enjoy music, art, dentistry? Whatever it is you like, I want to support that. But the joy of a newborn baby is the openness of that future. You don't know what's in this little kid.
Yeah.
That's part of the joy.
Yeah.
Part of joy is surprise. If there's no surprise, there's no joy.
Yeah.
We have imagined the omni-boring God. The God who knows the future with such certainty that nothing surprises him. And therefore nothing brings him joy.
Yeah.
Because he's already seen it.
God.
But the God who hasn't seen the future is a God who can be excited about your life.
Yes.
Because there's really, he can see the possibilities the way you can see it for your kid.
Yes.
And yes, there's lots of wisdom I want to share with you. Yes, there's lots of guidance I want to give to you. And yes, there's some things I try to kind of steer you into. But love is never overbearingly controlling to force you in a way that you don't want to go. Yeah?
So it seems like there's a dual situation here. I'm coming back to Hebrews 6.
Yes.
It says God made a promise to Abraham because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless you, multiplying I will multiply. And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise to Abraham. For men indeed swear by a greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end for all dispute. Thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of the promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it with an oath that by two immutable things, unchangeable things, in which it's impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation who fled for refuge to lay hold of the hope set before us.
Yes.
So I see there's a promise made there for us to have certainty that if we get there, we can be who we are.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
And I think there's a lot of texts, even if you look at the text that speaks about God changing and the text about God not changing, very often those texts about what is immutable or unchanging is God determining in himself. It's like a parent saying, I determine that I'm going to do my best for this kid. That's a determination which doesn't depend on the child. No matter how you behave, I'm going to do my best, and I'm unchanging in that. But then there's some stuff that says, okay, this is a relationship in which you have to choose, and depending on that, what you do, I'm going to do this. So in the actual living out, and also the promise that God makes it's always so beautifully vague. With blessings, I'm going to bless you. What does that mean? Or, I know the thoughts I have towards you. Some translation says plans, it's thoughts. It's thoughts to give you a future and a hope. That's beautifully vague. That doesn't mean your purpose is to become a pastor, otherwise you've missed his plan. No, your purpose is to have a future full of hope. Whether that's being a pastor or artist or a musician, that's vague. But what he has determined is, I'm there for you, for your life to have the greatest value, meaning, and beauty, which is all vague. Because that vagueness allows for your creativity. Say, what do we want to do?
How do we get ourselves from the obsession of trying to define God into experiencing the Father?
Yeah.
What would you advise us, in the light of this understanding, to get ourselves out of our own obsession, to try and define who He is, instead of allowing ourselves for His gaze to begin to influence our experience of ourselves?
I think it's one of the major things that has helped me is to try and find that place where experience and understanding complements one another. Maybe as a teenager, when I first started exploring theology, I was desperate to change my experience by believing the right stuff. And there's to some extent you can do that. I had some amazing experiences that way. But it becomes exhausting when you try and engineer experience, especially when after a while your ideas and your thoughts just doesn't translate into experience. So it's finding that place where what I formulate, what I understand has got to enrich experience. So I'm constantly thinking, what does this mean to experience what I experience? And then in the experience, see, the other opposite is people who say we just want to experience God, we don't want to talk theology. So they're not interested in the ideas or the thoughts at all anymore. I think that can also become shallow. It can kind of, I think that's experience with, that can easily be shallow to come and go. So there's no, experience is a term that actually by its very definition incorporates the physical and the mental. If you think of experience, it's something that happens internally, where the actual influences of your world, plus your whole history and your hope for the future comes together into an internal unity. That's experience. And so you can't separate mind-like qualities from experience. Because experience is deeper than just certain emotions. It's a whole feeling. So we continually, I mean, it's a journey, but I think we continually work out what does this idea mean to our experience? How can this idea draw us deeper into experience? And that's very often why we engage ideas that is experiential. So we've got the whole week course on meditation, because that brings you into a certain experience. We've got the Mimesis Academy that kind of gives a whole different meta-narrative for how to read the scripture and understand salvation, because those meta-narratives influences the way you tell your story.
That's right.
It's not just about that story. Eventually it's about your story. Because your story is your experience that enriches your world and the people you're in relationship with. So remain conscious when you're busy with ideas. What does this mean to my experience of God? And when you are experiencing God, ask, how does this experience change my theology? As you know, if you constantly experience God as better and good than what you thought it was, then maybe your theology of eternal conscious torment needs to be challenged. So your experience of God says, goodness, this God doesn't seem too interested in torturing people. So you've got to also allow experience to challenge your ideas. Thoughts?
There's a law of physics that fascinated me, and I think what you've shared sort of combines the unchangeableness of God with changes that is constant action as well.
Yes.
And it is the first law that says energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one mode of existence to another. And I think that really combines a facet or explanation of God. Because I mean, the first thing that he did when he decided to create and he changed his way of existence. And the fact that he describes himself as he cannot be, he wasn't created and he cannot be destroyed. And everything that he creates, it cannot be, what's the word now? Everything that he created is, it cannot be destroyed. I mean, your existence continue in terms of the person, let's say the enemy, the way that he changed, to put it that way, the narrative that we given in the Bible is that he continues to exist Nobody can be made non-existent again. That is what I want to say. Nobody can be made. So the thought pattern, therefore, in terms of, it either goes into darkness of understanding of yourself and your reason for creation, which is ultimately everything is created in relationship with God, for God. And then we come back to the fact that his words, the sound of his words, it's energy, and it is, and everything is actually consisting of, in terms of sound waves and so on, and subject too. So when he therefore tells us what we are capable of doing, if we accept what he says about us, then we would be able to speak like he speaks, and we will be able to say to the mountain, lift yourself up, and it will plant itself, it will really do what you say it to do. And I've also always wondered, why did he never do that? He didn't demonstrate that. He didn't demonstrate it. And it was, it's just something that it is. He's not frivolous in his action, trying to prove something, but he draws us in to experience him and his love that he has for us. And like Portia said, it's really a place where I came to rest when I understood that my destiny and my purpose is not something that I have to do, because that was the anxiousness that was part of my life. Because that is what you were taught and what you heard in the churches is discover your destiny and purpose, look for your destiny and purpose. And meanwhile, you miss the very thing that you were created for, enjoying your relationships. First of all, obviously with God, but I mean, you're born into a relationship, people don't know God. And yet when you see people enjoy life, they enjoy nature, and I believe God appreciates that. And then you come to a place where he talks about those who knew and those who didn't know. And in certain places he says it would have been better for you not to know than to have known, and then turns around and thinks something different. And so the way that God approaches us and reveals himself to us is in that moment beyond the religion that you are in. And like I said recently, God doesn't look at you, you're a believer, you're not a believer. Because when he tells us about how he deals with us, he demonstrated his love to all mankind. And he says that he gave evidence to all men by raising Jesus Christ from the dead. He includes everybody, and he desires for everybody to see that. And he understands that we have been darkened in our own understanding, not by our own doing. So he desires, and he's walking there with us, making use of every opportunity to awaken us to him and to the reality of how loved we are, and to release us from the darkened understanding that was imposed on us by whoever. And then also to be able to turn back and to say, I forgive and I let go, so that we together can come into a place of enjoyment. And so it releases you, this is my final thought, it releases you to really, in your workspace and so on, to help people to be released from that yoke, to relieve them from the competitiveness, and especially the competitiveness between church and home life, this time for destiny and purpose and resources and things like this, and to enter into helping them to discover and to release the beauty inside of them, what has been made part of them, and specifically discovering God and that you are walking in your destiny and purpose when you walk in relationship with the Lord. That is what it is all about in the lives. Daily.
Thank you.
Andre,
Yes,
I just wanted to tell my sister that I actually found destiny. She's in my daughter's class. If you're looking for destiny. There's also in abundance. There's a few of them. I just wanted to, this guy, John Keithley, speaks on thought, imagination, heart, and words. And all of that for me is just an exploration. Like, I just see like what you tried to unpack this morning.
Yeah.
It's like I almost want to use the word convergence. Like it's like everything all the time at the same time flowing together, and you have the freedom to almost take what is meaningful for you. It's not rigid. It's just convergence. Like I've been struggling coming out of the banking industry, and I've been this free man for a few years. Now I've been struggling like when I had this job situation, I was this person in the bank, and I was not a father, and I was not a person of Jesus Christ, for example. Like I was just a banker. When I left the bank, I realized, but Jesus was also a banker with me all the time. Like he was everything that I was, whatever was necessary with me in that moment. But I had to kind of leave leave the boat and explore the waters and realize that whether I can swim or not, He just provides whatever is necessary. Maybe a swimming coach, or maybe another boat, or maybe a whale. But he would be providing if I would increase in my consciousness of what is possible. So what I wanted to ask you is, I'm hearing a lot of the imagination language, jou verbeelde. En ek weet nou nie van julle af nie, maar ek is maar hier van die Kaap en ek was baie gesê gewees, jy moet jou op verbeel. Verbeel jouself wees. And I just always became anti-religion because ek was gesê gewees, ek moet op myself verbeel. Maar alles wat ek nou al so ver verbeel het, gebeur eintlik. Hoe meer ek myself verbeel, hoe meer ek verbeel ek sit hier saam met julle in 'n luister. So I look at, like you mentioned earlier on about the children as well, and how there's no limitations for my babies. There's just nothing impossible to do. While I'm trying to calculate how I'm going to navigate this in their hearts and minds, nothing is impossible to them. And I almost feel, anyway, I wanted to ask your opinion on imagination, because I don't think we give enough, I don't know if I'm going to say time or energy. We don't give enough there. And everything you spoke about today was, for me, Sheldon, it's kind of located in that space. The Father's thoughts is for you to explore. That gaze, when you gaze into Him, you actually start seeing that your gaze was all the time limited. It was not bad, it was good, and it was most likely in line with Him, but it was just not. There's expansion, there's endless possibilities there. I don't know if that's making sense to you.
It is, it's beautiful. I don't know if are they trying to come in.
I think we have only. I think we should have the last question, then we can wrap it up.
I think that idea of even being open to possibilities, but yes. Thank you.
Sorry for that.
No problem. Yeah.
Just on this, is there a difference between everything is possible or nothing is impossible?
Yeah. And yeah, even with the idea that everything is possible, I think there's some things that's impossible. It's not possible for me to be the King of England tomorrow.
But concerning God.
Yeah, so I think that where Jesus used that word of everything's possible, it was very often with people facing a situation that it seemed like this is the only route. And that he said, if only you believe, all things are possible. So it's kind of opening up possibilities that we haven't considered within a situation. And to tie it with the imagination and possibilities, I think the more we engage, or what you would say imagine, the more we engage with those possibilities, the more likely we make them to actually occur. That's why he would also say the things that he imagined, many of them came to pass. So there's something creatively significant about us purposely engaging with possibilities for beauty and for good and for meaning in our own lives and in our communities. We've often met, ministers as we traveled who said, "Oh, we want to travel and minister at different places." And I would say, "But why don't you?" And they would say, "Oh, but this and that and whatever other reasons." And I could say, if I thought of all those things, I wouldn't be traveling either and doing that. Because if I started off with, can I afford to go? If I started with all those questions, I would never have gone. But I started engaging with a possibility before I knew how.
Wow.
I started thinking, I can see us doing this. I can imagine people's lives being transformed if I can hear this. I can, and just engage yourself with the end result. That's something that you can really do now, and it costs you nothing. You can imagine that. And what that imagination does, it sensitizes you to the opportunities. Because if you just considered why you can't, you won't see an opportunity if it comes. But if you're already engaged, I remember when we were in England, and for a few months we were praying and saying, "Papa, we feel ready. We want to go." And at first the Lord said, what I share with you is not for you to just share, it's for you to enjoy. So I said, okay, that's my priority, just enjoying. I remember a few months later praying and say, I've enjoyed enough. I'm going. Are you coming with? And that was kind of a turning point. And so I could feel the Lord chuckling a bit. And so I said, where shall we go? And I just felt he said, Budapest. Now, we've never been to Budapest. We've never gone there. We didn't even know it's in Hungary. It's just like, there's a place called Budapest. And that day, I opened up an email, and there's an email from a guy saying, I see you've just released a book. I really want to get hold of it. But how can I get hold of it? I'm in Budapest. So can you see that me engaging with possibilities opened me up to an idea? Papa, who knows more than what I know, was already involved in that guy's experience of wanting the book in Budapest, telling me, okay, when I said, where can I go? Budapest. And that day I get the email, but how can I get your book in Budapest? So we just emailed him back and said, what are you doing the weekend? We'll deliver it. So we were in England. He was a little bit shocked as well. But we were ready to go. And that simple encounter with one man in a coffee shop led to that whole country opening up. We went over constantly after that, ministering in monasteries or prisons or little groups. We've just come back from an amazing time with a group in Hungary. Books have been translated into Hungarian. So it started off with that simple place of just opening myself up to possibilities that I did not even know exist. Saying we. I want to win. Yeah. So it's such an important thing, imagination. I think one of the worst things we can do with our imagination is pump it full of the media that is available to us. Kind of blunt ourselves to our own creative ability because we just bombarded with whatever news somebody else thought is worthy of your attention. God has ideas for your life that is much more significant than anything that you can find on the news today. Awesome. We loved our time with you. Thank you so much. So good to connect.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming today. We want to especially thank Mary Anne and Andre for your time that you've made yourselves available to come. But for all of you who want more information and want to have contact with the ministry, and they've got beautiful books, and Andre just shared slightly. So maybe you might just say what you guys are doing, so people can know. So if they want to interact with them, then you can just get the information quickly. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I said
Thank
enough.
you.
Thank you guys. Ek het dit gerecord, so we will. I'll just shrink it a little bit, and then I'll put it on Divine Embrace Moments Facebook page, and then you guys can look at it. So
Great.
if you want to leave, maybe just make a note, Divine Embrace Moments. It will be on that Facebook page, or you just look. Yeah, allemaal van julle weet waar dit is, nee. Alright. Okay, cool.
And for the best way to stay in contact with us, simple website, always loved, Loved, alwaysloved.net. If you subscribe to our newsletter, we're excited about launching a fellowship in the year to come. I think we're going to call it The Whole. It's inspired by a thought of Charles Hartshorne that said the difference between God and creatures is not the difference between the infinite and the finite, but the difference between the whole and the fragmentary. So the idea that you are a fragment of God, of the whole. So we're going to be launching a fellowship that will be an online thing every 2 weeks, also encouraging people to then get together in the week between. But just subscribe to the newsletter and you'll get the news for that, and we've got the online school and everything's there for you to look. Alwaysloved.net.
How's that?